All right, let's talk coach of the year. Who is winning coach of the year in 2023? Technically, they would win it in 2024, but you know what I mean. The 2023 season. Um, let's just get into it. Let's start off with number 10, which because I think I'll be able to kind of explain why I'm ranking it this way as we go along. But number 10, I'm putting Mike Tomlin, and some people might say, like Mike Tomlin's way better than the 10th best coach in football. He is. He's absolutely. I have him as I believe I have him as the second best coach in football. You can talk me into best coach in football. I think he's fantastic. But at the same time, the issue with this and kind of the issue with the award in general, I saw that Andy Reid had the lowest odds to win coach of the year this year. If that's the case, this award is flawed, right? And the issue is that a lot of the voters aren't people who watch a ton of film and really analyze it. It's a lot of, wow, I thought that team was only going to go 7-10 and they went 11-6. So I'm going to give them the award because it makes me look less stupid for giving them that, that expectation. So for Tomlin, I still have him on the list because I don't know how many people are predicting them to be a playoff team, but they probably have to win like 13 games to actually get the awards. So that's why he's lower on the list, despite the fact I think he's a great coach. And like number 9 is kind of a similar thing with Bill Belichick on the list, which again, I do think they would want to give someone like Belichick or Tomlin the award if they could justify it. And they could justify it with X's and O's. But like for Belichick, for him to get it, basically what would have to happen is the Patriots would have to make the playoffs. That's how they would have to do it. And then they might say, wow, we didn't expect the Patriots to make the playoffs. They did. Therefore, it's a genius job by Bill Belichick. We weren't wrong in the preseason by saying they would miss the playoffs. It's that Bill Belichick is great. I don't think they'll make the playoffs this year, so that's going to be tough. But if they do, for sure, there is some hope there. We didn't have Shane Stetchen at number 8, and now we're getting into some guys where it's like, you know, the difficulty for someone like Stetchen is not necessarily going to be he is the Colts head coach, and it's not necessarily going to be could he coach well. Typically, I always kind of the Kevin Stefanski winning the Coach of the Year award is the perfect example of like he coached fine that year. It wasn't like a poorly coached year. Like it was a well-coached season, and people didn't expect the Browns to make the playoffs. They made the playoffs. They gave him the award. If the Colts find a way to make the playoffs, which is going to be really tough, and I don't think it'll happen, for 100%, Stetchen would get the award. And I guess I could see the Colts making the playoffs. Like I could see it happening. I think it's possible. If that were to happen, I'm not saying, for sure he wins the award, but there's a really good chance he wins the award. Number 7, I'm going to D'Amico Ryans, who is another guy who very similar to Stetchen's, kind of in the mix of like, no one's expecting the Texans to do anything. If the Texans, who, also like the Colts, play in the AFC South, because I think that's one thing people would point to is like making the playoffs in the AFC is really tough, but there's an easier pathway of, what if Trevor Lawrence gets hurt? Then someone has to win that division. The Titans are still there, but it would be possible. And I think Ryans has a little bit more of he's a bit more of a name right now than Stetchen. I think people know who he is a little bit more, so that would certainly help. I do think that if they can find a way to squeak in, they would win he would win the award. I also think that he's a good head coach, and there would be kind of a real narrative to, I shouldn't say good head coach because we haven't seen him coach yet, but he's a good NFL mind, and he could translate to being a good NFL head coach. And I think that if that happens, then he would get additional credit for what's going well. Again, are the Texans going to make the playoffs? That feels unlikely, but I didn't think the Giants would make the playoffs last year. So, again, I'm kind of predicting what is something I don't think will happen, but if it did happen, would win someone the Coach of the Year award. Number 6 is Robert Saleh, which this kind of goes into, against what I've been saying earlier of like, people are expecting the Jets to be good. So how can I give it to Saleh? Well, again, people like Saleh, and that helps. Being a likable head coach, being someone, a media darling like Saleh is, that is going to help. At the end of the day, the voters are human, right? So, being someone they can root for, yeah, why wouldn't that help you be able to win the award? On top of it, I just think that he's a good coach. And like, okay, is it out of the question the Jets could get the 1 seed in the AFC? I don't think so. I don't think it's out of the question. And again, if maybe they tie the Chiefs for the best record in football or something like that, I could see them giving it to Saleh, saying, wow, we were concerned. He managed Aaron Rodgers, all that stuff. I can see it. So he's at number 6. Number 5, I'm going Arthur Smith. Similar to like Stetchen and D'Amico Ryans, but I think he has a better chance of actually pulling that kind of thing off and being able to get into the postseason. I still don't love the quarterback issue and the defense and all that stuff. I do think that there is a scenario where he's able to get his team to win the division, which is a weak division. I think that's totally possible. And if he can make that happen, 100% he's going to get the credit for this. Again, everyone talks about with the Bijan Robinson edition and all this, that it's the Arthur Smith offense. That's how they view it. And so if he can make it work and get into the postseason, 100% he would be a playoff contender, a coach of the year contender. Matt Eberflus, kind of a very similar thing to Arthur Smith, both in the NFC, where I think have a higher likelihood of making the playoffs. I do think that, we've seen a Bears head coach win coach of the year not too long ago when Matt Nagy won it in his first year with Chicago. People are expecting good things from the Bears offense. But at the same time, I think if this team wins, 9 games and gets into the playoffs at 9-8 as just a wild card team, that would probably win him the award. I think there's a really good chance, at least, that wins him the award. And I think that there's not a 0% chance that happens. The defense looks rough, and that's going to be something they're just going to have to figure out how to work with. But as a whole, there's a narrative here, so I'm going with him at 4. We don't have Frank Reich at number 3, which is, again, kind of very similar to Arthur Smith, almost an identical situation of a team that, if they make the playoffs, hey, got to give credit to Frank Reich. I also think that the Panthers are in a bit better of a situation than the Falcons. I know some people will disagree, but I think, let's not forget, the Panthers basically had the division won last year. They were up 11 points against Tampa Bay in the fourth quarter in week 17. If they just hang on, they win that division almost certainly. They still would have had to either win the next game or have Tampa Bay lose the next game, but it would have been a really, very likely they would have won that division. And that was with all of the, the chaos that was going on. Now, doesn't necessarily mean they'll be just as good this year. There still are some concerns. Losing DJ Moore will hurt, but adding Bryce Young should help a lot with that. So again, I think that they have a chance to make the playoffs, and I think that Frank Reich could win the award if they do. Number 2 is Sean Payton. And the reason why I have him so high is I feel like, I don't know, Russell Wilson could hit. Like, we don't know. People are going to say, oh, I know for sure that he will or won't hit. No, you don't. We don't know. None of us know if Russell Wilson's good or not. I think Sean Payton thinks he's good. And if Sean Payton can turn it around and make Russell Wilson good, that team probably is in the playoffs at the very least. And who's going to get the majority of the credit? The guy who was the head coach, because that's the main thing that they've changed from being a bad team to now a potential championship contender. Yeah, Sean Payton, very good chance of it happening. A very good chance of him being a coach of the year winner if that happens. The question just, will it happen? I think that's kind of the main thing that's standing in the way. And at number 1, this is kind of the one person who I feel like both I can see the narrative, and I think that narrative has a good chance of happening. Dan Campbell. I do think that if Dan Campbell and the Lions just make the playoffs, I don't think they have to win 13 games. I don't think they have to exceed expectations too much. If they meet expectations, let's say they go 11-6 and win the division, it could be kind of a not lifetime achievement, but like a 3-year achievement for Dan Campbell of like, you took this team that was basically, left in the dust, and you turned them into a playoff contender just 3 years later. If you want to talk about a media darling, there's no one more like than Dan Campbell in the world, it seems like. So he's definitely someone who people would want to see win the award. And on top of it, I think he's a good coach. Like, I think that people talk about Dan Campbell all the time, but we don't talk enough about just how good of a coach he is. A lot of really good X's and O's, really good analytically inclined head coach. So that might actually hurt his chances, given how some of these voters think about things. But I think he has the best chance to win it. But that's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.